There are days when you look at the news cycle and you think, okay, surely we have hit the bottom. Surely we have reached the point where the Republican Party cannot possibly degrade the institutions of this country any further. And then, almost like clockwork, they look at that rock bottom, they pull out a jackhammer, and they start drilling. If you are just tuning in to what is happening in Indiana right now, you need to stop what you are doing and pay attention. Because we are not just talking about politics anymore. We are not just talking about gerrymandering or maps or the desperate clawing for power. We are talking about state-sanctioned gangsterism. There is no other word for it. Here is the situation. It is December 2025. The midterms are a year away. The census maps were drawn years ago. They're finished. But Donald Trump looked at the map in Indiana, where Republicans already control 7 out of 9 seats, and decided that wasn't enough. He doesn't want a majority, he wants a monarchy. He wants all 9. So he ordered the state GOP to reopen the maps right now, mid-cycle, to erase the last 2 Democrats from existence. Now, usually state legislators just roll over. They do what they're told. But one Republican, State Senator Mike Bohachik, said no. And he didn't say no because of some abstract love for the Democratic Party. He said no because he has a daughter with Down syndrome. He said no because he remembers Donald Trump mocking a disabled reporter. He looked at his own child, looked at the man demanding his loyalty, and said, "I cannot do this. His words have consequences." It was a moment of actual human conscience, a rare thing in the GOP. And how did the MAGA machine respond to a father standing up for his daughter? Did they try to persuade him? Did they whip the votes? No, they swatted him.
Let me repeat that because I want to make sure we are all inhabiting the same reality. A sitting state senator in the United States of America refused to help Donald Trump rig an election map, and in response, police were sent to his home under false pretenses. This is a tactic designed to terrorize. It is a tactic designed to get people killed. This isn't hardball. This isn't the rough and tumble of politics. This is a mafia shakedown. This is the leadership of the Republican Party telling its own members, if you do not bend the knee, we will put your family in the line of fire. And the most pathetic part, the Indiana House is going along with it. They convened today. They are looking at this violence. They are looking at this intimidation, and they are saying, yes, sir, whatever you say, sir. It is spineless, it is dangerous, and it proves once and for all that there is no line they won't cross. If they will do this to their own colleague, if they will terrorize a Republican senator for having a shred of moral backbone, imagine what they are planning to do to everyone else. We need to dissect exactly how this happened because when you look at the timeline, the forensic evidence of this pressure campaign is absolutely damning. To understand the absolute insanity of this moment, you have to look at the timeline. You have to strip away the noise, ignore the spin coming out of the Indiana State House, and just look at the raw, forensic evidence of what took place over the last few weeks. Because when you lay it out, day by day, tweet by tweet, threat by threat, the picture that emerges is not of governance. It is a hostage video. Let's start with the baseline reality.
In 2021, the Republican-dominated Indiana legislature drew the current congressional maps. These were their maps. They drew them. They passed them. They signed them into law. These maps were designed, quite literally, to maximize Republican advantage. They locked in a 7-2 split in the state's delegation. 7 Republicans, 2 Democrats. In a state that, while red, is certainly not that red. This was already a masterclass in gerrymandering. So the question you should be asking, the question every single reporter in Indianapolis should be screaming from the rooftops is this: what changed? Did the population shift dramatically in the last 3 years? No. Did a court strike down the 2021 maps as illegal? No. Did a massive sinkhole open up and swallow a 5th district? No. Nothing changed. Nothing changed except for the desperation of Donald Trump.
We know exactly when this started. This didn't bubble up from the grassroots in Fort Wayne or Evansville. This came from Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump looked at the 2026 electoral map. He looked at the razor-thin margins in the House of Representatives, and he panicked. He realized that running on his record wasn't going to be enough. He realized that the red wave keeps turning into a red ripple. So he decided that the only way to guarantee a majority is to steal seats before a single ballot is cast. And he zeroed in on Indiana. Specifically, he zeroed in on two people, Frank Mervyn in the 1st District and Andre Carson in the 7th District. Let's look at the 1st District, because this is where the cynicism is so thick you could cut it with a knife. The 1st District is Northwest Indiana, the region. This is steel country. This is Union country. This is the ancestral home of the working class in Indiana. For decades, this district has sent Democrats to Washington, because the people there know who actually fights for their paychecks and their health care.
Frank Mervyn is a moderate. He fits the district. But to Trump, Mr. Mervyn isn't a representative of his constituents. He is a glitch in the matrix. He is a math problem to be solved. So the pressure campaign begins. And notice the escalation. It wasn't a request. It was a directive. Trump publicly demanded that Indiana Republicans step up. And then, like clockwork, Vice President J.D. Vance enters the chat. You have the Vice President of the United States effectively twisting the arms of state legislators, demanding they reopen a finished legal process to secure a political outcome. This brings us to the pivotal moment, the resistance. State Senate Pro Tem Roderick Bray, a Republican, mind you, initially looked at this request and said the obvious part out loud. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, we don't have the votes. He knew it was a bad idea. He knew it opened the state up to lawsuits. He knew it was a blatant power grab that broke every norm of legislative stability. Bray tried to kill it. He tried to say, not now, maybe later, but not now, and that is when the hammer came down. Suddenly, the narrative shifted, suddenly the grassroots pressure intensified, and suddenly lawmakers started receiving messages that made them fear for their safety. We have to talk about the specific mechanics of this intimidation because it is being glossed over by the mainstream press. When State Senator Mike Bahacek indicated he would not support this measure, he wasn't met with a counter-argument about population density or communities of interest. He was met with a weaponized police response. Swatting is not a prank. I need to be very precise about this. Swatting is when someone calls 911, claims there is an active shooter or hostage situation at a specific address, and triggers a militarized police deployment to that home. They send SWAT teams with long guns drawn, ready to kill, to the home of an unsuspecting victim. This happened to a sitting state senator.
And let's look at the timing. It happened after he dissented. It happened after he cited Trump's ableist rhetoric as a moral red line. You do not need to be a detective to see the cause and effect here. The message was sent. Vote the way we tell you, or you are not safe in your own living room. And what did the Indiana House do in response to this domestic terrorism against their own colleague? Did they pause? Did they say, we cannot proceed under these conditions? Did Speaker Todd Huston stand at the podium and say, we will not legislate at the barrel of a gun? No, they convened. On December 1st, they walked into that chamber, stepped over the wreckage of democratic norms, and started the process of giving Trump exactly what he wanted. Speaker Huston has effectively acted as a rubber stamp for the White House, ignoring the fact that his own caucus is being threatened. And let's look at the map they are likely trying to shove down our throats. To get a 9-0 map to eliminate Frank Mervyn and Andre Carson, you have to engage in cartographic mutilation. You have to take the urban center of Indianapolis, the 7th district, which is majority minority, and you have to slice it up like a pizza. You have to crack that community into 3 or 4 pieces and dilute their voting power by submerging them in the surrounding deep red rural counties. That is the only way to do it. You have to disenfranchise black voters in Indianapolis, period. There is no other mathematical way to turn that blue seat red. And for the 1st district, you have to take those steelworkers in Gary and Hammond and dilute them with voters from hours away who have completely different economic interests.
They are not just redrawing lines, they are erasing communities. They are saying to the black voters of Indianapolis and the union workers of Gary, your voice is inconvenient to the president, so we are taking it away. And they are doing it in a rushed emergency session in December when nobody is watching, when families are planning for the holidays, under the direct threat of violence. The forensic evidence here is conclusive. This is not a standard legislative process. This is a commandeered government. The Indiana General Assembly is no longer functioning as an independent body representing the people of Indiana. It has been converted into a wholly owned subsidiary of the Trump re-election campaign. And the most damning piece of evidence, the silence of the so-called institutionalists. Where are the other Republicans condemning the swatting of Senator Bohacek? Where is the outrage from the Law and Order Party about the abuse of emergency services to terrorize a lawmaker? Their silence is the confession. They know this is wrong, they know this is dangerous, but they are more afraid of Trump's tweet than they are committed to their oath of office. They have calculated that the cost of complicity is lower than the cost of courage. But here's the catch, and this is what they are hoping you won't notice. By forcing this vote now, by using these tactics, they are exposing the fragility of their entire operation. If they were confident they could win in 2026 on policy, they wouldn't need to do this. If they thought their ideas were popular in the Rust Belt, they wouldn't need to gerrymander Frank Mervyn out of a job. This isn't a show of strength. This is a confession of weakness. They are terrified of the voters, so they are trying to pick the voters before the voters can pick them.
And that brings us to the pattern. Because if you think this is just an Indiana story, you are missing the forest for the trees. This is not an isolated incident. This is a blueprint, and they are testing it right here, right now, to see if they can get away with it. But if you think this is just an Indiana story, if you think this is just a couple of overzealous local politicians trying to impress the president, you are missing the war for the battlefield. Because when you zoom out, when you look at the map of this country, you realize that Indiana is not an outlier. Indiana is just the latest domino to fall in a coordinated national strategy to render your vote completely irrelevant. Let's look at the receipts, because they are everywhere. Just last month, November 2025, look at what happened in North Carolina. It was the exact same playbook, word for word. Donald Trump issued a directive, maximize the seats, and the North Carolina GOP, which already had a stranglehold on the legislature, went to work. They didn't just tweak the lines, they took a chainsaw to them. They took the 1st District, a historic black district represented by Don Davis, and they cracked it. They diluted the black vote in the black belt of the state just enough to turn a toss-up seat into a likely Republican pickup. They didn't do this because the population changed. They didn't do this because of a court order. They did it because they could. And the result? A swing state that is nearly 50-50 in presidential elections now has a congressional delegation that looks like it belongs in deep red Alabama. They turned a purple state into a Republican fortress by administrative fiat. And it wasn't just North Carolina. Look at Ohio. On October 21st, just a few weeks ago, the Ohio Redistricting Commission met. Now, Ohio voters, the people, passed a constitutional amendment years ago demanding bipartisan, fair maps. They literally voted to stop this kind of nonsense. And what did the Republicans on that commission do? They ignored it. They ignored the Constitution. They ignored the voters. They sat in that hearing room while citizens in the gallery were screaming shame, and they pushed forward with a plan to turn a 10-5 delegation into a 13-2 supermajority. Think about that math. Donald Trump won Ohio with about 55% of the vote. But under this new map, Republicans would control 87% of the seats. That is not democracy. That is an occupation. And let's go back to Florida, because this is where the modern version of this strategy was perfected. Governor Ron DeSantis didn't even wait for the legislature to do his dirty work. He drew the map himself. He personally intervened to dismantle the district of Al Lawson, a black Democrat in North Florida. He chopped a community that stretches from Jacksonville to Tallahassee into pieces, ensuring that those black voters would never again be able to elect a candidate of their choice. And when the courts looked at it, when the Florida Supreme Court packed with DeSantis appointees reviewed this blatant racial gerrymander, they rubber-stamped it. So do not tell me that Indiana is an accident. Do not tell me that the swatting of Senator Boacek is a random act of intimidation. This is the system working exactly as it was designed. The strategy is simple and it is terrifying. The Republican Party has realized that they cannot win the popular vote. They have lost the popular vote in 7 of the last 8 presidential elections. They know that their policies, banning abortion, cutting Social Security, gutting healthcare, are deeply unpopular. So they have decided to stop trying to win voters and start picking them.
They are looking at the 2026 midterms, and they are doing the math. They know they might lose the suburbs. They know they might lose young voters. So instead of changing their platform, they are changing the map. They are going state by state, North Carolina, Ohio, Florida, Texas, and now Indiana, and they are squeezing every single drop of power out of the system. They are trying to build a firewall so high that it doesn't matter if 60% of the country votes for Democrats. They want to create a House of Representatives that is mathematically impossible to flip. And the most dangerous part? They are doing it right in front of our faces. They aren't hiding it in smoke-filled rooms anymore. They are tweeting about it. They are bragging about it. They are sending the vice president to state capitals to enforce it. They are testing the boundaries of American democracy, poking it to see if it will collapse. And so far, it is collapsing. The courts are letting them do it. The media is treating it like savvy political maneuvering. Then the base is cheering them on. But here is the thing about breaking the rules to seize power. Once you start, you can't stop. Once you decide that the law is just a suggestion and that norms are for suckers, you have to keep escalating. You have to keep finding new ways to cheat, new ways to intimidate, new ways to force your will on the majority. And that brings us to the end game. Because if they get away with this in Indiana, if they successfully swat a senator into submission and steal 2 seats in broad daylight, what do you think happens next? And that brings us to the terrifying reality of the endgame. Because if you think this ends with a map or a district or a single election cycle, you are not looking far enough down the road. If the Indiana GOP succeeds in bulldozing these maps through the legislature under the threat of violence, if they successfully use swatting as a whip count strategy, we have crossed a Rubicon from which there is no return. We are watching the real-time normalization of political terrorism. Think about the precedent being set right now in the heart of the Midwest. If a state senator can be terrorized in his own home for defying the president, and the result of that terror is that he caves, or that his colleagues cave, then violence becomes a legitimate tool of political persuasion. It becomes a line item in the campaign budget. They are teaching their base that if you don't like a vote, you don't need to write a letter or primary the candidate. You just need to call in a bomb threat. You just need to weaponize the police. And if they can do this to a Republican senator, someone on their own team, what do you think they are prepared to do to a Democrat? What do you think they're prepared to do to a poll worker in 2026 or a certification board member in 2028? This is how you dismantle a democracy. You don't burn the Reichstag every day, you just raise the cost of dissent so high that nobody can afford to pay it. And let's look at the immediate political stakes. They are not doing this for their health. They are doing this because they know that the House of Representatives is the only thing standing between a second Trump term and total unchecked rule. If they lock in a 9-0 map in Indiana, combined with the rigged maps in North Carolina and Ohio, they are effectively starting the 2026 election with a 15-seat head start. They are building a House majority that is mathematically insulated from the will of the American people.
They want a Congress where they can lose the popular vote by 5 million, 10 million votes and still hold the gavel. They want a Congress that doesn't answer to you. And look at what they are ignoring to get this done. This is the part that should make every Hoosier's blood boil. While they are rushing back to Indianapolis for this emergency session to save Donald Trump's ego, what are they not doing? Are they calling an emergency session to fix the price of housing? No. Are they rushing back to lower the cost of childcare? No. Are they holding crisis meetings about the fentanyl epidemic ravaging rural Indiana? No. They have time to redraw lines on a map to help themselves, but they don't have time to help you. They are spending tax dollars to disenfranchise black voters in Indianapolis and union workers in Gary, while ignoring the very real economic pain that their constituents are feeling every single day. It is the ultimate expression of contempt. They are telling you to your face that their power matters more than your survival. But here is the good news. And yes, there is good news. They haven't won yet. The Indiana Senate does not convene until December 8th. That gives us 1 week. 1 week to make sure that the cost of capitulation is higher than the cost of courage. Right now, there are protesters filling the Indiana State House. There are people in the region and Indianapolis who are refusing to go quietly. They are showing up, they are calling, they are making it clear that they are watching. And we need to have the back of people like Senator Bohasek. We need to show that when you stand up to a bully, you are not standing alone.
Because this is the break glass moment. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It is not something you watch on TV and hope works out in the end. It is a muscle. And right now, in Indiana, that muscle is being tested to its breaking point. If they steal these seats, they steal the House. If they steal the House, they steal the check on the presidency. And if they steal the check on the presidency, the experiment is over. So do not look away. Do not let them do this in the dark. Share this story. Call the Indiana State House. Tell them that we know what they are doing, we know why they are doing it, and we will not let them destroy representative democracy without the fight of their lives. The lines on the map may be drawn in ink, but the future is written by us. Let's get to work.